Hello, everyone. Number 10. Christopher Columbus was actually an Italian explorer. You might have learned in school that Christopher Columbus, the man considered to be the discoverer of the Americas, was an Italian explorer who sailed west across the Atlantic Ocean in order to find a faster route to Asia. However, it has been said that he wasn't actually the first European to reach the Americas, nor was he even the first Italian to reach the Americas. If you want to impress your friends, you might rent a limousine or a yacht. King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table are legendary figures from medieval history. However, they quickly became a source of profit for those who discovered them. The first recorded sale of a mummy took place in 1826, when a British officer sold the mummy of a woman named Horemheb for £20. Her family, the Ptolemies, was descended from Alexander the Great's general Ptolemy I, who helped him conquer Egypt in 332 BC after Alexander's death. He is often portrayed as a brutal and merciless leader who slaughtered anyone who stood in his way. As mentioned earlier, Christopher Columbus was an Italian explorer who is credited with discovering the Americas. The Last Supper is one of the most important events in Christian history. It is the meal that Jesus shared with his disciples before his crucifixion. However, it is not actually the Last Supper Jesus ate with his disciples. According to the Bible, Jesus had a total of 7 Last Suppers with his disciples. The first Last Supper took place during Passover, when Jesus and his disciples celebrated the Passover meal together. The other 6 Last Suppers took place on other occasions, such as when Jesus attended the wedding at Cana, or when he broke bread with 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus. While all of these meals were important, the Last Supper is the most well-known and celebrated. However, despite his monumental discovery, Columbus never realized that he had actually reached the Americas. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Throughout his life, he believed that he was in India. This is because Columbus had set out to find a faster route to Asia, and he assumed that he had reached the eastern coast of India. In fact, when he reached the United States, he actually named the natives Indians because he believed they were in India. This misconception persisted until his death, and so Christopher Columbus died believing he was in India. However, recent DNA tests have revealed that Genghis Khan was actually half Uyghur. The Uyghurs are a Turkic ethnic group that lives in China, and it is believed that Genghis Khan's Uyghur grandmother was taken captive by his Mongol grandfather. This makes Genghis Khan the first known leader of a major empire to have mixed ancestry. This discovery has led some historians to believe that Genghis Khan was more tolerant of other cultures than previously thought. In fact, he is said to have spoken several languages, and was known for his ability to unite people from different cultures together. Ptolemy I was appointed as the ruler of Egypt, and his descendants ruled over the country for the next 300 years. Cleopatra was the last of these rulers, and although she identified as Egyptian, she was ethnically Macedonian. This fact is often forgotten, and Cleopatra is mistakenly portrayed as an Egyptian queen. But it's important to remember that Egypt was ruled by foreign powers for much of its history. The Egyptians were a proud and resilient people, but they were often conquered by outsiders who came from different cultures and had different customs. Since then, mummies have become a valuable commodity on the black market, with some selling for millions of dollars. In fact, in 2007, the mummy of a pharaoh named Amenhotep I was stolen from a museum in Egypt and is still missing to this day. The thieves likely stole the mummy in order to sell it on the black market, where it could fetch a high price. This is just one example of the lengths people will go to in order to profit from mummies. The illegal trade in mummies is a multi-million-dollar industry and shows no signs of slowing down anytime soon. Arthur is said to have been a British king who ruled over a noble fellowship of knights known as the Knights of the Round Table. This military force became known as the Sacred Band of Thebes and is widely regarded as one of the most effective fighting units in ancient history. The Sacred Band was formed in 362 BC by the Theban general Epaminondas. At the time, Thebes was a small city-state in Greece that was constantly being threatened by its larger and more powerful neighbors. However, Epaminondas believed that he could turn Thebes into a major player in Greek politics. If he could assemble a military force unlike any other, this is when he decided to form the Sacred Band of Thebes. Members of the Sacred Band were required to be male lovers, who had been together for at least 3 years. This ensured that the soldiers would fight with courage and ferocity, since they were fighting not only for themselves, but for their loved ones as well. The sacred band went on to achieve a number of victories for Thebes, including the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC, where they defeated the Spartan army and ended Spartan dominance in Greece. Unfortunately, the sacred band was eventually disbanded after the death of Epaminondas. Still, the story of the 300 gay lovers who fought and died together has captured the imaginations of people throughout history. Together, they are said to have performed many heroic deeds, including defeating invading armies and rescuing damsels in distress. Although many people think of Arthur as a mythical figure, recent discoveries have suggested that he and his knights may have actually been real people. This is largely due to the discovery of a number of archaeological sites that date back to the time period in which Arthur is said to have lived. Additionally, there are a number of historical records that mention Arthur and his knights. Although these records are often brief and sometimes contradictory, despite this, many historians agree that Arthur was probably a real person who lived in Britain during the 5th or 6th century. And while there is no evidence that he had a round table or knights, there is a good chance that he was a powerful leader who fought against invading armies. But during the 18th century, the wealthy would rent something even more impressive, a pineapple. During this time, pineapples were only available in the winter months, so renting one was a way to show off your wealth and power. The wealthy would rent them for special occasions, like weddings or parties, and would keep them on display until the event was over. This was a popular trend among the elite in Europe and America, the wealthy individuals often competing to see who could rent the largest pineapple. In fact, there was even a pineapple club formed in 1732 by a group of wealthy Englishmen who rented a pineapple just for the social prestige it brought. So if you ever see a painting or a photograph of a wealthy person from the 18th century, take a closer look. They might just be holding a rental pineapple. In fact, it is believed that many Vikings had established settlements in Newfoundland, Canada around 500 years before Columbus arrived. There is evidence that suggests these Vikings stayed for about 10 years and built a settlement known as Lanceau Meadows. Fortunately, we don't know exactly why they left or how they got back to Europe. Some scholars believe the settlement was abandoned because of attacks from the local Inuit people, while others believe the Vikings simply chose to leave once their resources were depleted. Either way, it appears that Christopher Columbus was not the first European to step foot in North America. Another myth about Columbus is that he didn't actually discover the Americas. He was actually looking for India and mistakenly landed in the Bahamas. He was so convinced he had reached India, he actually named the natives Indians. Turns out the landmass he landed on wasn't actually India, but rather one of the Lucayan archipelago islands. Number 9. Ancient Greek and Roman statues were actually brilliantly colored. Most people assume ancient Greek and Roman statues were just bare marble or stone. But recent discoveries have shown that this isn't entirely true. Many of these statues were actually brilliantly colored, which helps us to see ancient cultures in a new light. For example, the statue of the Winged Victory of Samothrace, which was discovered in 1864, was found to have traces of red, blue, purple, and yellow paint. Another example is the statue of the seated Zeus at Olympia, which was discovered in 1877 and found to contain traces of red, blue, green, and other colors. These findings have led historians to believe that ancient Greeks and Romans didn't just appreciate the beauty of marble and stone, but also enjoyed adding splashes of color to their sculptures. This is especially interesting considering that many of these statues were made during the classical period, which is considered to be a time of great philosophical and artistic achievement. So if you ever visit a museum and see an ancient Greek or Roman statue, take a closer look. You never know what colors you might find. No, 8 pineapples used to be rented as a symbol of wealth and power. Number 7. King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table were probably real people. Number 6. Mummies were actually very expensive. When mummies were first discovered in Egypt, they were seen as a valuable source of knowledge about the past. 5. Ancient Thebes once assembled an elite military force consisting of 150 pairs of gay male lovers. 4. Cleopatra was not actually Egyptian. While Cleopatra is often portrayed as an Egyptian queen, she was actually Macedonian. 3. Genghis Khan was actually half Uyghur. Genghis Khan is a legendary warrior and conqueror who founded the Mongol Empire. 2. Christopher Columbus actually died believing he was in India. 1. The Last Supper was not actually the Last Supper Jesus ate with his disciples. Thanks for watching. Which of these myths surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below.